Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to map out one of the most incredible creative quests you can go on, the journey from a single, simple idea all the way to a finished, published book.
Yeah, it's a feeling a lot of us know. You get that amazing spark of an idea, and it's thrilling. But then you look at the road ahead, and it just feels huge, overwhelming, almost like you're staring at a completely blank map. Well, today, we're going to fill in that map. We're breaking this epic quest down into clear, manageable stages.
So here's our game plan. This is our roadmap. We're going to start by forging your core idea. Then we'll architect a blueprint for it. After that, it's drafting, then refining and revising, and finally, launching that book out into the world. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right into this first stage because it is absolutely critical. Before you even think about writing chapter 1, you have to be sure your idea has real heart and substance. This is where you build the intellectual bedrock for the entire project.
You really should think of this part as an investment. Seriously, anytime you spend here really hammering out your concept and making it solid will save you from hundreds of hours of painful rewrites and creative dead ends later. It's all about building with conviction right from day one.
To really test if your idea has legs, you've got to put it through the ringer, a little interrogation. Ask yourself, and be honest, why does this book need to exist? What makes it unique? Who am I actually writing this for? And for that person, what problem or question or curiosity does it answer? Answering these forces you to prove to yourself that your project is worth it.
And that brings us to the magic of the log line. The challenge is this: can you boil your entire book down into one single compelling sentence? Something like, a disgraced detective must solve a century-old cold case to redeem her family's name. Why? Because that sentence becomes your creative compass. If you write a chapter or a scene that doesn't serve that core idea, well, you have to ask if it even belongs in the book.
So, once your idea is solid, it's time to switch hats. You're not just a dreamer anymore, you're an architect. You'd never try to build a house without a blueprint, right? The exact same principle applies to writing a book.
A lot of writers get scared of outlining. They think it's going to cage their creativity, box them in. But the reality is, it's the complete opposite. A good outline handles all the heavy lifting of structure and logic, which actually frees up your brain to focus on what really matters: the creative, beautiful prose.
A good outline is your secret weapon against writer's block, for real. When you sit down to write, you're not facing a terrifying blank page. You're just tackling one specific, manageable scene from your plan. It also makes sure your story flows logically, and it makes editing so much easier later on. Think about it. Moving a bullet point is way easier than rewriting a whole chapter you realize is in the wrong place.
So, the key is to choose the right kind of blueprint for your project. For something like nonfiction or a pretty straightforward story, a classic linear outline, chapter 1, chapter 2, works great. But for really complex fiction with tons of moving parts, something like the snowflake method is amazing. You start with your one-sentence logline and just keep adding layers of detail, almost like growing your story like a crystal.
All right, you've got your blueprint. Now we shift from the architecture to the actual craft. This is the moment you transform that logical structure into something alive, something engaging, through the art of prose.
Your authorial voice, well, that's the soul of your writing. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. It's that unique personality that comes through on the page that lets readers connect with you and your story. It's what makes your work truly uniquely yours.
These are pretty much the fundamentals of powerful writing. Economy of language just means trimming the fat. Make every single word earn its place. Varying your sentence structure creates this wonderful rhythm for the reader. And then there's the most famous rule of all: show, don't tell. And this is exactly what that means in practice. Telling me he was angry is fine, it's forgettable. But showing me his clenched fists, his tight jaw, now you're inviting me to experience the scene for myself. I'm there. That creates a much deeper, more immersive connection.
So, you did it. You finished a first draft. That's huge. But as pretty much any author will tell you, the real work, it's just getting started. The true magic, the thing that turns a messy manuscript into a polished book, that all happens during revision.
So what's the very first step of editing? You're going to love this. Do nothing. That's right. Put that manuscript in a drawer, on a hard drive, whatever, and walk away. For at least a few weeks, maybe even a whole month if you can stand it. That distance is the single most powerful editing tool you have.
When you come back to it after that break, it's like you have a new set of eyes. You're no longer the writer who was so deep inside the story. You're a reader, and you'll spot the plot holes, the clunky sentences, the parts that drag, all the things that were totally invisible to you before. This fresh perspective is everything.
To keep from getting completely overwhelmed, it's best to tackle editing in 3 distinct passes. First, you do a developmental edit. That's the big picture stuff: plot, characters, structure. Then you do a line edit, where you zoom in on the sentences themselves, the prose and the flow. And finally, the last pass is copy editing. That's the fine-tooth comb for grammar, spelling, and typos.
Okay, now for the final leg of the journey. You have forged your idea, drafted it, and refined it. Now it's time to navigate the whole business side of being an author and actually get your book out there into the world.
You've really got 2 main roads you can go down here. Traditional publishing gets you professional support and wider distribution, but it's a very long, very competitive process, and you get lower royalties. On the other hand, self-publishing gives you total creative control and much higher royalties, but you are responsible for everything: the editing, the design, the marketing. It takes a big investment of both time and money.
Now listen, no matter which of those 2 paths you choose, building an author platform is completely non-negotiable in today's world. Think of it as your personal brand, your direct connection to the people who are actually going to buy and read and love your book.
So how do you do it? Well, a professional website is your home base online. Social media is where you find and talk to your community. But a mailing list, that might be your most powerful tool. It's a direct, unfiltered way to communicate with your biggest fans, and you want to start building this stuff early.
And there you have it. That's the map. You forge a solid idea, you architect a blueprint, you draft the manuscript, you refine it like a sculptor working with stone, and then you launch it into the world. It's a marathon for sure, not a sprint, but as you can see, it is an achievable quest.
So, we've laid out the map for you, we've handed you the compass. The process isn't a mystery anymore. The only question left, and it's the most exciting one of all, is what incredible story are you going to tell? The adventure is yours to begin.